Well, the Crow reboot no one asked for squawked its way into theaters last night, and for the most part, this one should have stayed dead. There's definitely some bloody fun to be had once the story you're there to see finally gets going, but it's a tall task to stay interested long enough to see any of it, as the entire first half of the movie is the definition of skippable. This modern reimagining opted to show us Eric and Shelley's budding romance, fueled by little more than drug use and their desire to fill the parts of their broken soul with someone as damaged as they are. The original cult classic wisely skipped most of this type of backstory, instead filling the audience in on Eric and Shelley's relationship purely through chaotic flashbacks and the unbridled grief Eric displayed when he was brought back to the mortal realm and forced to face the love stolen from him. Ironically, letting the viewers learn about Eric's loss in this manner is one of the stronger approaches to storytelling the original Crow took, but this 2024 version chose to spend half its runtime on that part of the tale, to the movie's detriment. Now let's not get caught wearing blood red, rose-colored goth glasses here. The Crow from 1994 has its issues. There's plenty of acting and dialogue to criticize, but it has moments of undeniable brilliance, and every minute of the film is fully engrossed in this unique gothic theme. It may be cheesy goth fantasy a lot of the time, but it's not without charm, and it's hard to come away thinking the original is a bad movie. And it has a cool factor that this reboot only briefly touches. In fact, beyond the general idea, the characters' names, and a few shots of a crow looking over the protagonist, this Crow from 2024 shares little in common with the original from 30 years ago. It too has some good moments, but they're few and far between, and the movie doesn't elicit the same feelings that the original does. And we'll talk about why this Crow's wings were clipped after we get in a recap of the reboot, which means spoilers ahead. Beginning with a flashback to Eric Draven's traumatic past, we see his futile attempts to save a white horse stuck in barbed wire as his meth-head mom floats off to La La Land. Moving to the present, we meet Shelley, who's in some hot shit as her friend is trying to blackmail someone with a video. Shelley's friend is captured and they come for Shelley too, but she gets arrested on purpose and shipped off to some kind of insane asylum, where a grown-up Eric is already undergoing rehabilitation. Then we meet the villain Mr. Rogue, who's made a deal with the devil to send the souls of the innocent down to hell in exchange for keeping his own. He whispers vile nothings into Shelley's friend's ear, leading the girl to kill herself. So I guess that's his superpower. Something earplugs could stop, but whatever. In the asylum, Eric and Shelley awkwardly hit it off, with their new romance hitting its peak when Shelley finds the naked pictures Eric's drawn of her alone in his cell next to a tub of Vaseline. Real match made in heaven stuff. When Shelley's mom shows up alongside some of Rogue's people to meet with her, she and Eric make a break for it and escape the asylum. The two make it to a friend's house where they kiss and bone and smoke weed and do drugs and drink, and the movie plays this off as romance. Maybe that asylum was the right place for them. Later on, after Shelley divulges some of her past in Eric and the terrible things her mom made her do, the two talk half-jokingly about jumping off a bridge before we immediately jump to them at a rave club. There, Shelley's friend is scared shitless and tells her she needs to leave town. But before she and Eric can, Mr. Rogue's men capture and suffocate them as they die, looking into each other's eyes. Eric finds himself in a crow-infested purgatory, where a nice gentleman explains that some people experience a sadness so terrible that their souls can't rest, and that this crow will guide him on his journey to set things right. And as long as his love for Shelley stays pure, he can't be killed. Eric doesn't believe it, and who can blame him with the amount of drugs he's been doing, and he wakes up at the scene of the crime. There, a dirty cop comes in to finish the job, but a shot to the chest proves insufficient to kill Eric, who returns the favor and kills the cop. And then Eric's wounds heal, and it's pretty gross. Eric sees Shelley jump from that same bridge, and he follows suit, only to end up in the same purgatory as before, where the same guy from his first visit explains that Shelley's soul is on its way to hell. He also explains Rogue's arrangement with the devil and how he's not meant to walk this earth, but if Eric can kill those responsible for her death, Shelley's soul will be saved. Back in the real world, Eric tracks down Shelley's mom and weirdly unveils his whole plan to her. Then he heads to Rogue's building, where he goes after one of Rogue's associates, Marion, ending up in her car where he fights everyone before getting tossed out the door and into an oncoming semi-truck. Then Rogue visits Shelley's mom, where she tells him all about Eric's plan before Rogue talks her into suicide. Back in the apartment, Eric finds the video from before, which shows Shelley murdering someone when under Rogue's control. So he heads to a friend's house where they get ambushed by Rogue's men. Eric fights back and gets his friend killed before taking a shotgun blast to the chest and dying again, falling backward into a completely full bathtub because I guess his gang-banging homie was about to take a relaxing soak. Back in Purgatory, the guy explains that he's dying for real this time because he now doubts Shelley after seeing her kill someone. Eric has missed his chance at vengeance and squandered his godly gift. But Eric offers to trade his soul for Shelley's, causing the crows to swirl around him, with one crow entering him from behind, signaling that it's a done deal, signed in his new black blood. He wakes up back in the real world and kills the guys that came for him before getting word that Marion is headed to the opera. So he paints his face with his new black blood, grabs a samurai shoto, and heads to the opera himself. Here he kills every guard in sight, interspliced with scenes from the opera unfolding on stage in an admittedly cool scene. He works his way to Marion herself, and, after getting the information he seeks, he takes her and her husband's heads onto the stage and tosses them into the crowd as souvenirs. With just one soul left to collect, Eric heads to Rogue's mansion. Eric gets too close, however, and Rogue whispers in his ear, as no one seems to be recognizing that earplugs, this guy's kryptonite, can be picked up at CVS for $1.99. Anyway, he starts to take some of Eric's power. Under this trance, Eric is struck by his horrific memories, but in the end, his good memories win out, and he takes Rogue out the window with him as the two fall into purgatory. Here, Rogue calls Shelley a whore, and Eric beats the devil out of him before Rogue's soul is pulled down into hell. Shelley floats up from hell, and she and Eric embrace, but she realizes he can't come back with her. Up on Earth, Shelley is revived, and she sees that Eric is dead, and he's left to wander purgatory with the crows as the movie comes to an end. The first half of this movie, the truly original parts, are the weakest part of the film. And with all the worst parts of this movie front-loaded, it's really hard to feel like you're watching a good movie by the time the interesting parts get started. I also think the shift away from the darker, gothic tones of the original doesn't do this movie any favors. The aesthetic plays a large part in that, and you don't need to look past the main character to see the obvious problems with this change. Where the original gave us Eric Draven, the gothic rocker that would have looked at home on stage with 9-inch nails, this reimagining of the character casts him more in the vein of Jared Leto's Joker from Suicide Squad, who's trying to promote his SoundCloud page. This version tossed aside everything that made the original a cult classic. Another change this movie made was it traded the theme of love and loss for love and sacrifice. Rather than setting out to avenge his murdered wife, Eric is now on a mission to sacrifice his own soul for hers. I think it's a fine idea, but you do seem to lose something in this shift. Having Eric being driven by pure vengeance in the original, with no hope of ever bringing his love back to life, just hits harder. By putting a Shelley-shaped carrot on the end of a stick, this new version changes the dynamic of Eric's existence in this realm, and for the worse in my opinion. And I think the movie makes a mistake in spelling out exactly what's going on to the main villain, so he knows Eric is here and what his deal is, and it removes some of the mystique around Eric and his quest for vengeance. Letting Rogue slowly uncover for himself the nature of Eric's existence on this plane is a powerful storytelling tool that this movie left out of its arsenal. Now, once the action gets going, it's great and sufficiently bloody. These scenes offer a few moments of unbridled fun, but they don't make up for the rest of the movie. There is one really cool moment where Eric offers up his soul for Shelley's and he accepts the black blood and fully becomes the Crow. It's just as edgy as it sounds, but it's still cool. Like the original, this movie has some great moments, but they don't reach the same level of brilliance that those same kind of scenes in the original did. There are some good ideas, but some weak execution. Now, similar to Eric Draven, this reboot spent 15 years in production purgatory itself. Mark Wahlberg, Bradley Cooper, Jason Momoa, Tom Hiddleston, Ryan Gosling, James McAvoy, Alexander Skarsgard, Luke Evans, Jack Houston, and Channing Tatum were all names bandied about to play Eric Draven. 5 directors and 5 writers later, the reboot finally rose from the dead. But if this is the best they can do, I think it might have been better off staying dead. That sentiment was echoed by the director of the original, Alex Proyas, who wished that they had just let the original stand alone as Brandon Lee's legacy. Lee's final performance and infamous death on the set of the original set a high bar for any Crow movie to clear in a lot of people's eyes, and this reboot, at least, doesn't soar high enough. I'm giving The Crow a Hatewatch designation because I can't recommend you spend your time with it. It's the kind of movie where you can catch all the cool scenes on YouTube in a couple months and get everything good the movie has to offer. Fans on Rotten Tomatoes are giving The Crow a 65%, and it's getting a 3.4 from viewers on Metacritic, but there are a very low number of reviews thus far, so take it with a grain of salt. With a $50 million production budget and it heading toward a $6 to $9 million opening box office, the movie will face an uphill climb trying to turn a profit. I just don't think The Crow was the kind of movie that needed a reimagining. A lot of the aesthetic and tonal changes moved away from what made the original likable. And yet this iteration fails to strike its own unique look and feel in the process. I do have to thank this movie for making me go watch the original again. In fact, I think I'll do a video highlighting and analyzing those moments of brilliance I mentioned before, so some good may yet come out of this reboot. Did you have any interest in watching The Crow, or did the trailers turn you off? What are your thoughts on the 1994 original? Do you think that the movie should be left to stand on its own, or do you think there are directors, writers, and actors out there that could do the original justice? Let us know in the comments below. Also remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for clipping this crow's wings with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.